Okay, so this is week 12 announcement for English 242. So we only have a few weeks left in front of us. Of course, this week we will have, let me bring up my page here, some presentations. We will be talking about Jack Kerouac as well as I can't bring up my announcement, but Jack Kerouac and one other who I can't remember. But anyway, both of those presentations will be uploaded there on the announcements page. So anyway, one thing I was going to tell you is I have a document open here that you may find interesting. And so I have two final exam questions that I'm going to release a little bit early. And so I know it seems like, at least I checked yesterday, no one has taken the final exam just yet. Remember, you have a couple more weeks, but I'm going to release two of them and let you do whatever that you want with them, okay? Remember that with the final exam, you're choosing 5 out of 6 questions. So theoretically, of the 2 questions I'm about to give you, you could choose not to do one, but that means that you've committed to the others. So how you want to do it, you can study for it, take in notes, etc., for whatever that you want to do for your exam. But I'm just going to go ahead and give you those 2 right now to kind of give you a little less to worry about during that 2-hour block when you're supposed to be putting everything together. So here are the 2 questions. One question is, how is class examined in The Sculptor's Funeral and A Sweatshop Romance? Okay. So that's one question. I'll give you a second to write that down. Okay. Or pause it. This is a video. What am I talking about? This isn't live. Okay, so anyway. And then the other question that I'll give you is, how is the fall from the Roaring Twenties to the Great Depression depicted in F. Scott Fitzgerald's work? Okay, so those are the 2 questions I'll release a little bit early for your final exam. You still have 4 others that are mysteries for the most part, but I figured I'd go ahead and give you those so you wouldn't have as much of a time crush chasing you down during the exam proper. So along with that, make sure that you are working on studying for the exam, getting ready for the exam, keeping up with your materials. We only have a few presentations left, and then we go into Stoner, which is this guy right here, okay? And so if you haven't picked up this book, it's a good time to do so, because in a couple of weeks we're going to be discussing it pretty in depth. And so as you take a look on course documents in the Blackboard module, you'll find all the way at the bottom a file called Stoner Quotes, okay? And so that file is going to be important because you're going to be responsible for some of the material in that particular folder, or file rather. And so for the last 2 weeks of discussion board, I will say, okay, well, this quote from this chapter and this quote from this chapter, Rachel will tell me what that means, that sort of stuff. And so you'll see in discussion board will be a little bit more unusual in that I give you a firmer assignment in that you will kind of discuss the context and the importance of that particular quote. And this is all just kind of leading up to, if you choose to write about Stoner for your final paper, sort of going through it, and also me making sure that you read the work and so on, which is generally important. Now, as you go through, many of you may not even be thinking of an English major, which is fine. You may be thinking of an English minor. That's, not a bad idea, and so on. But careers in English proper, like literature, are few and far between. But I do encourage people to pursue English as a minor because it shows you're a critical thinker. You can write well, communicate well orally, all of those sorts of things. But somewhere along the way, regardless of your major, you may have to take an English class that is 300-400 level as an elective or something of that nature. And what normally happens is you would take a class and be assigned several novels for that particular class. And so I remember for my 300 level Thomas Hardy class, I read probably about 10 novels over 15 weeks. And so that right there may turn you off from pursuing that, but it's also something that's a good exercise in reading efficiently, reading quickly, but also reading for coherence. And that's kind of what we're doing with Stoner, because we're reading 1 to 170 something, if I remember correctly, and then the rest of it in 2 consecutive weeks. And I'm kind of doing that so you can get like the big person college experience, the upper level college experience that is more normal in terms of reading workload, regardless of your discipline that you choose to go into. You're going to be reading significant amounts of material and be expected to be responsible for it in a short period of time, basically. And so it's not unusual. Like, I took a philosophy class at 300 level. It wouldn't be unusual for them to say, read these 4 chapters and then be ready for a quiz on those 4 chapters. And each chapter is probably like 40, 50 pages long. And so maybe I just had, I just picked the wrong classes. But my understanding is still the 300 and 400 level classes, wherever you transfer to, you'll still be experiencing some heavy workload. And this is my attempt to sort of get that in your mind and get you thinking about how you'll focus on that. So also along the way, you may be getting emails soon. I got an email myself, but I couldn't tell if it went out to you all. That's an IOTA course evaluation. So think about the course, the things that you learned, the things that you didn't learn, the things that you wanted to learn, all of those sorts of things. This is only the second time I've taught 242 online. And so it's always a hit or miss proposition in terms of me understanding whether or not you're getting the material. From what I'm seeing on the discussion boards, everyone's pretty much spot on. But I've never been a fan of reading quizzes because I want people to think about the bigger picture rather than, just small details and so on. And by the time you're in 242, it's pretty much assumed that you're a good enough college student that you will be reading the material, understanding it on your own without having me follow up behind you and constantly like, did you read that? Did you read that? And so on. So anyway, if you get that IOTA evaluation, feel free to fill that out. I usually like to have around half of the class fill it out at the very least, but the more the better. And I usually take a look at those over the summer and say, all right, well, for my next 242, what do I need to change? One of the biggest questions is, if I remember correctly, they allow you to have like an open space where you can insert comments in there. And really, I want you to think about this guy, okay? And let me know if you thought it was worthwhile, if you thought it was a good novel, something interesting, something you got stuff out of. When I first chose Stoner, it was almost at random. I had read 3 or 4 books that I felt would be appropriate for 242 in terms of language and understanding and American literature, et cetera, et cetera. And I was really sort of divided on which ones to give you. So I just went with Stoner, basically. And class I had last semester, the classes I had last semester, 242, ate it up. They loved it. But again, I'm looking for feedback on Stoner, maybe thinking about switching it perhaps, whatever. If you find flaws with the class, and I tell this to all my classes, if you find issues with the class, tell me what those issues are in the IOTA evaluation. Remember, it's pretty anonymous. I don't get access to it until after graduation, I think. But just don't say this class sucks. Tell me why it sucks, okay? And then I will take it from there in terms of figuring out what I need to change things up. So again, just really quickly, we have presentations this week. Our presenters will have those uploaded and ready to go by Monday afternoon. The presentations thus far have been exactly spot on. Everybody's been doing a great job on those. And the discussion boards too. You all need to give yourselves a pat on the back. You all are starting to really come into your own, I think, as critical thinkers and approaching these ideas in American literature as well. Also, keep in mind we have supplementary material at the wazoo under course documents, so if you find yourself sort of jammed up on what people are bringing up in the discussions, or after you read something, I don't understand what's going on there, there are some supplementary materials out there for some of the tougher stories and poems and plays that are out there. So feel free to go through those, but I'm not necessarily holding you responsible for those. They're just things that are out there to help you sort of color the picture in a little bit more. So keep in mind your exam, your evaluations. Your final paper is coming up at the end of the semester as well, so register for Turnitin, take a look at the rubric, view the presentation, all of that jazz. So everything's coming all at once, but kind of keep your head above water and keep going. I have confidence in each of you. You all have been doing very well. So just kind of keep doing what you're doing as always. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.